A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Hey, let's talk kids. Some seem to have it all together, while others seem to be missing some important dimensions. And not everyone comes from the perfect family with the best role models. Well, our next guest says one school principal told him just recently, there is a tsunami of need out there. We might all hope that all of our kids get the best start, but sometimes there are circumstances that mean some are missing out on important values and relationship dynamics. Well, our next guest leads Kids Hope Australia. They're working with 185 schools around Australia with nearly 1,000 mentors who are connecting with kids facing vulnerabilities. Simon Warrick is CEO at Kids Hope Australia. Simon's joining us. Hey, Simon, welcome along to 2020.
Thanks so much, Neil. Great to be with you today.
Hey, Simon, there seems to be more and more kids who are facing vulnerabilities. What's your impression here?
Look, you mentioned before in the intro about the principal talking about the tsunami of need. A lot of that comes down to technology that the parents are engaging in and not necessarily spending time with their kids at home. But in the same way, we've got a lot of people coming from other places and trying to assimilate into Australia. There's significant need there. And it actually gets a little bit overwhelming at times. We've got 75 schools wanting our program right now, Neil, and we've got to find ways to serve them.
Okay, a couple of numbers in there I think worthy of keeping in our heart and mind as we have this conversation. You're working in 185 schools already. This is not a new initiative. This is up and going. There's boots on the ground. You've got just under 1,000 kids who are being mentored across the country, and but really it's just scratching the surface of need. You mentioned you've got 75 schools on a waiting list, basically saying, hey, send us some mentors. This is a number that's growing, no doubt.
Absolutely. And a lot of it's coming in without us doing anything. That's unsolicited requests. People are Googling wellbeing and they're finding Kids Hope and sending a message to us saying, look, can we have your program? So there's so much need out there. We've been going for just over 21 years now, so we're not new to Australia, but certainly the need's ever increasing.
Hey, there's runs on the board. You're working both in cities and in country towns. Whereabouts, all over Australia? I mean, are there areas where there's some more need than others? What works best? Cities, country towns, everywhere?
Look, we're honestly everywhere. We actually were running more programs pre-COVID, but obviously COVID being a time when lots of schools stopped engage or closed down and churches found it hard to do life, things slowed down a little bit, but it was definitely on the intake or the increase now. And we're national. We're right across the country. I don't think we've got any programs in the Northern Territory right now, but we certainly have had historically. But pretty much every other state, we're well represented.
Okay, no doubt there's some Northern Territory listeners to our conversation right now saying, you know what, this idea of having mentors for kids is a good one, and I'll look forward to giving a connecting point at the end of our conversation. Hey, it's a digital age. Some people talk about TikTok generations and those sorts of things. Where kids are getting their values and how disconnected they might be from the important relationships in their lives. Kids are getting alternative sources. This is a really great initiative you've got, just putting real people in connection with these kids. And no doubt Christian people is who you're wanting to actually have there as being mentors. Is that the way it works?
Yeah, look, for us, I mean, there's a couple layers to that statement. Obviously, the technology side of things has become a bigger problem than maybe we realised. We often see kids who I would describe them as effective orphans. Their parents are at home, they might be there, but they tend to be stuck to devices when the kids are present with them. And what we provide is a mentor who's screened, who's got covered with our child protection process, and they go and spend an hour a week with a child in school during school hours, just investing in them. And we do that by connecting a local church with the local school. And part of our child protection process is mentors actually need to be approved by their local church to make sure that that their minister says, yep, we trust that these are safe people. So that's part of our child protection process as well.
That's so important, isn't it? And love to hear your reflection a little more on that, because a lot of people have been reluctant to be involved in things like teaching RI and scripture in schools, and even getting involved with children's and youth ministries in their local church because of these issues around child protection. But if you're appropriately screened, you ought to just dive into this space and make a real difference. Somehow or other, there seems to me there needs to be a revival of this ability for adults to be connected to children because they're having a positive impact on their values and as a role model.
Yeah, look, it's definitely something that we've got to consider. I mean, Kids Hope is a wellbeing program. It's important to state that up front. We honour and recognise the secular nature of education, and our role isn't to try and present particular scriptures or anything like that. Our role is to love these children, to show them that they're valued, that they're important, and all that's done within the framework of the school time. So schools welcome us in because we're not, they're not having people jam opinions down kids' throats. They're just there to spend time and to love them. I describe it in a faith environment as kind of presenting who Jesus is by our actions, and that's a pretty amazing thing to be able to do.
And that's something, isn't it, that characterises the Christian believer typically, because you want to be involved in your community, and this makes a great opportunity for being connected in such a way that's going to affect the life of a young person by being their mentor.
Absolutely. And I've even had principals say to me, Simon, there's something about that group of people. They do this because they just want to serve. They're not pushing any agendas. They just want to be present. And we can't even give them accolades. They're just happy to be here. I had another principal say, Simon, the culture of our whole school has changed because the Kids Hope mentors are coming in. And that's just because they're coming in and they're smiling at the lady at reception who might be the one who cops all the grief from parents. They're just they're having fun, and they're being just wonderful people in their communities. And these principals are taken aback a little bit. They're trying to work out, why are these people coming? And when you say, well, it's because they just care, it makes all the difference. They come to serve, which is, what we do.
Simon, what about your own story in all of this? You're at the helm there, you're leading the organisation, but this is personal for you, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is. When I applied for this role, I was telling my mum, and my mum said, "Gee, I wish Kids Hope was around when you were a kid." We had some a pretty traumatic childhood with. I guess it's not uncommon for a parent to leave, and then we had to move schools, and I was bullied in primary school and had some challenges along the way. Plus, my childhood got even more complex from that point on. But one of my friend's dads kind of played that role for me. We met on the first day of grade 2, Lael and I, and we just hung out, and he supported me through the bullying space, and his dad just invested in me and cared for me and treated me as one of his own. And, we still see him today. My kids call him Papa Rodney. And he played a role that in my life, he mentored me without realizing he was mentoring me. So when I see these kids who are withdrawn, who are upset, who are feeling the challenges of life, I feel like I'm looking in the mirror sometimes, and to be able to serve them with having a parent, a grandparent or figure or something coming into their world is so special.
Here we are, two men talking about this, and the sorts of images in my mind are of, men who are mentoring boys. But what about the other side of the equation? Women who will mentor young girls. It seems to me the need is equal across both boys and girls here. Does it look like that in practice?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've got a good cross-section of males and females who do the mentoring. The children, really, the demographics of the children are diverse in based on like genders, but ultimately it's what the school. Our model is that the school will say these are the kids facing vulnerability who need support. So we don't decide who the children are. That's the decision of the school. And then our process is that the school matches them with an appropriate mentor. Generally, it's gender consistent, but not always. I saw recently a beautiful story of a lady who was walking the journey with this young boy. The family were from an immigrant family. And just the stories that you hear of that relationship and how it grew. The school let her bring her dog in, and this child didn't have a dog at home, so he got to play with this mentor's puppy. And then the family, I heard recently, were at risk of homelessness, and the school connected the church, and the church were able to provide support around that sort of stuff too. So there's a lot that happens in the mentoring, but beyond the mentoring as well is really special.
Just touch on for a few moments some of the practical things here. What do you do as a mentor? Now, you mentioned this, and I'll come back to these numbers. 75 schools right now. There's no mentors for those kids that need them right now, and you're looking to connect with some people today, no doubt. But what sort of things does the mentor do? Or is it based on your own gifts, your own interests, and how that actually works and fits in with kids?
That's completely it. So we've got mentors who will do anything from, I remember talking to one mentor, and he basically just runs laps of the oval with the child because that's what the child wants to do. We've got other people who they'll read stories or they'll play games. We actually had one woman who just retired. She retired at 84 years old from mentoring. She told me the story of one girl she had a few years ago. And this little girl, the teacher went across to her and said, "Can you teach her how to cook, Dory?" And Dory's like, "Sure, why?" "Well, she might come to school with a Mars bar if she's lucky." So Dory taught her to cook, and it started with toast and cheese and graduated to chicken fried rice. And here's the beautiful part of the story. This little girl goes on school holidays, and she comes back, and the first time she gets to see Dory, she runs over to her with joy in her eyes and excited to see her. "Guess what, Dory? Oh, what's going on? I went to my grandparents for holidays, and I got to make them chicken fried rice, and they loved it." You know, that little girl's probably in her 20s now, and you've got a little girl who has learnt to cook, has learnt the value of healthy eating because Dory spent an hour a week with her for a year or two. You know, it's those beautiful little moments that we get to hear time and time again. So really, it's whatever connects the adult and the child.
And who knows, Dory might go on to be a world-famous chef one day, and all because a mentor took a little bit of time to get alongside. You know, I can't help but thinking, you know, things like, you're talking about the guy who runs laps of the oval, you know, sporting coaches. Now, obviously, there are, you know, there's probably all sorts of organisations that look after sporting coaches, but would that be one of the sort of things, too, that a mentor might become involved in? Although that's a group thing, whereas your mentor is all about more individuals. How does that look?
Yeah. So our model is one adult, one child, or one mentor, one child, 1 hour a week. So the special thing is a mentor will go into a school, and that mentor is only in that school to spend an hour with that child. I was chatting to someone just recently, and he's got a grade 1 boy. It's just started this year. And he said, you know, the first question my kid asked me was, "Are you getting paid for this?" And his answer was, "Well, no, I'm not." And he said, "Well, who else are you here to see?" And he said, "I'm only here to see you." And that's the beauty of what we get to do. You see, this child probably has social workers who are paid to spend time with him and invest in him. And whereas he had this person come into his world and just be present for him because he's special and he's important. And their relationship is messaged me a bit later and told me some of the fun things they're doing together, including playing table tennis on the staff room table with no net, but if you lose a point, you've got to do a dance. You know, they just have fun. They do fun things together that changes the story of this child's life.
So this can happen during school hours or outside of school hours. Does it happen on weekends?
It happens.
Yep.
No, it happens during school hours.
During school hours.
On the school term, on the school premises. Generally, the children leave their class to go and spend an hour with their mentor. So we're quite intentional with that because we want to protect the children and the mentors. So the relationship is purely this mentoring hour at the school, and then that's it for the connection. But that's life transforming for these kids.
What about the age of mentors? Does it matter? You might be in that parenting age and you've got a little extra time, and you know that there are some kids that are vulnerable in the classes, in the school, and you could sort of put your hand up and say, I've got my own family, but I can put a little extra time in. What about people who are, out of school age? Their kids are all grown up, maybe even their grandkids are grown up. What about the age of mentors? How does that look?
That's an excellent question, Neil. Look, for us, anything from 18 to 100, someone can be a mentor if they've got an hour a week to invest in a child. That hour a week, we require them to commit to at least 1 year, because these children may not have, they don't all have stable people in their world. So this annual commitment's pretty important. But we've got a big portion of our volunteers are retirees. 10% of our volunteers are over 80. And I was chatting to this one guy who's 92 and still mentoring. I think he's been doing it for 15 or 16 years. And he said, Simon, I wouldn't not do it. Keeps me young. So it's really, you can be a grandparent to someone else's child, just spending time and caring for them.
Okay, 1 hour per week, committed for a year. It happens during school time. And there's no age limits here. I'd be surprised if you weren't inundated with a bunch of inquiries just to find out how you get this process started. Now, come back to the process and the screening of mentors for a few moments. Some people might be thinking, do you have to jump through hoops to get the appropriate cards and various things that will enable you there to be a mentor for a child? What's the process like for someone who wants to do this?
Yeah, excellent question. The temptation there, Neil, was to say, yes, there's 1,700 hoops to jump through. But the answer is no, we try and make it as simple as possible, but also we're really keen to make sure the children are protected. So the process will generally start with, we'll have a program which is connecting a church with a particular primary school. So that's driven by that church community generally. So what that means is people who want to become mentors are generally known in that community. So there's a referral process, there's a screening process whereby there'll be a pastoral reference. Every mentor is screened by the local coordinator who runs that program. They make a couple of phone calls to different people that are reference checks. Then they do a working with children check. And we've also got a whole lot of child protection training as part of the mentor onboarding process. So we do our very, very best to make sure that the children are protected and also the mentors too, for that matter.
And no doubt the schools are very good at identifying those kids that are facing vulnerabilities. Let me just, we've got to wrap things up in a moment, but just let me ask you, the alternative. If kids don't get the mentor they need, they're left dangling or they slip through the cracks, they just miss out on a dimension of their lives. If kids don't get what they need, the trajectory of their life can look completely different, can't it?
Absolutely. I was chatting to a police officer a little while ago who's looking at doing some early intervention stuff here in Victoria. He was reflecting that he was dealing with teenage crime. And he was saying what they've worked out is if the children have early intervention, if they have, someone in their life as a kid to mentor them, if they have a good meal, if they get to school, those are all indicators for a lesser amount of people as teenagers and early adults in the justice system. So we were actually talking about implementing Kids Hope in a number of schools in his area to be able to support that bigger narrative that he's creating.
Well, there might be listeners who'd love to connect with you and find out a little more about how they could be involved in a mentoring role, 1 hour each week and committed for a year. And maybe there might be a hoop or two to jump through. As you say, it's not that complicated. But for those who are looking to connect, sounds like a great organisation. Already 185 schools, been running more than 20 years. But there's 75 schools who are reaching out and saying, we need mentors, send us a few. And it may be that you are in one of those communities. You'll need to check in with Simon, those ones that are desperate, but certainly to get together with Simon and just make sure you're registered on there to take part in the possibilities here. The website to go to is kidshope.org.au. That's how you'll connect with Simon Warrick. Simon's the CEO at Kids Hope Australia. Now, let me just ask you, I often will say, what about, money, finances? Your organisation, are there needs there, Simon? How do you stay afloat? How do you expand and grow from here? I no doubt you probably need a few more friends here, but how does all that work?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Look, for us, we are a not-for-profit. We charge a nominal fee historically to churches to run the program, but that doesn't cover our costs. It costs us about $4,000 to launch a program right now. We're working on streamlining that to make it even more cost effective, but that's our current reality. And we work through donations. That's our primary way of continuing to grow. So we're working really hard to build that part of our area out too, because we need money to launch programs. That's just the cold hard facts of it. So yeah, about $4,000 a year to launch a program.
Okay, well, there might be some listeners who can be a part of that process as well. Here's that website one more time to connect with Simon Warrick, who is CEO at Kids Hope Australia. It's kidshope.org.au. kidshope.org.au. You could see yourself as a mentor. A good place to start, just connecting with Simon. Simon, thanks so much for sharing your heartbeat with us here on 2020.
Thanks, Neil. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.